we have the pleasure of having one of my favorite authors, BR Kingsolver. BR Kingsolver here today. Yeah, I'm tongue-tied. Sorry. He's the author of romance, paranormal, thrillers, telepathic clans. He grew up surrounded by writers and artists with myths and folklore in Santa Fe, here in the land of enchantment. I have been reading his books now for a couple of years, and of course he goes under BR, and he has a really strong female characters. For some reason, I thought it was a woman writer. He was so strong with them. And so when I first found out that his name was Bruce, and I was just like, wow, you know, I'd never seen somebody that could do that and be so convincing in that sense. So it was a pleasure. He writes in the genres that I enjoy reading the most. So this has been fun, and I've been looking through all of his series, and nobody does it better in terms of putting together a series. So I'd like to introduce you to Mr. BR Bruce Kingsolver.
Can people hear me okay? Is that, am I close enough to the mic? I'm fine? Okay. I've been writing for about 10 years, and I've published 25 books, mostly in series. And so Rose asked me to do a presentation on writing series. And so next.
Okay.
Okay, what makes a series? Multi-book continuity and development, a series-wide conflict, an addictive world or setting, a series arc. Sometimes the story is just too big to put in a single book. Lord of the Rings was originally a single book, and Tolkien's editors said, no way in the world we're going to put 2,000 words out, bound, and have people be able to lift it. So they broke it up into a trilogy. First book I ever wrote, after 180,000 words, I turned to some people to read, and they came back and said, Bruce, this isn't a book. This is a, you know, commitment.
Online, they want you louder.
Online, they want me louder. Okay. Let me hold it like this. How's that? Better?
Keep it up close to the mouth.
Okay. Next slide. No, back one. Oh, no, there. Okay, why do you put it in series? I said sometimes the book is just too big. But there's also a thing about money. If somebody goes to the bookstore and you give them something that is, you know, going to break their arm trying to carry it home, and you tell them that you want, you know, $30 for it, and then they look at this other book and it's going to fit in their purse fairly easily, and you tell them that you only want $12 for it, what's the chances? Okay. The other thing about writing in series, even if the books are not huge like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, is you get a chance to sell a book 3, 5, 7, 9 times rather than selling 1 or 2. And that's more money in your pocket. readers fall in love with characters. They want to see them, be able to cuddle up with them and spend time with them. And when they finish a book, I've had people write me within 24 hours of a book's release asking, when's the next one? I tell them to read slower. But other thing is, writers also fall in love with the characters. If you're not enjoying what you're writing, then you can pretty much bet that your readers aren't going to enjoy it either. It shines through. I love some of my characters. I would love to have dinner with them, have a drink with them, and write another book with them. Advertising and marketing. Every time, okay, big 5 publishers, they decide they're going to market a book, and they put $1 million into marketing to make Stephen King's next book a bestseller. I don't have $1 million to do that with. In series, whenever you're advertising, especially online with Amazon or Apple or Barnes and Noble, when you're putting your ad dollars out there, you can't afford to advertise every book in a series. And you can't afford really to advertise every book you write. But if you have a series, you can advertise book 1 in the series. And if they like book 1, they will buy book 2. If they like book 2, they will buy book 3. And so your ad dollars that you're putting into book 1 end up getting spread out over buying 4 or 5 books. And that makes it much more cost effective to advertise. Because if you don't advertise, if you don't tell people that you have a book, how are they going to find it? How are they going to know? How are they going to buy it? Other thing, somebody mentioned to me years ago about binge culture. You know, you look at Netflix. My wife is in the process. She discovered something you might have heard of called Breaking Bad. She discovered it just a few weeks ago. And all of a sudden, that's on every night at my house. If someone likes your books, likes your characters, they'll read them one after the other, after the other, after the other. And the other thing is when they do that and they finish a series, if they really liked it, next thing they do is they go looking for something else that you wrote. Backlist exposure. When I had my first breakout hit, it lifted all of my backlist. Books that had sat and were doing almost nothing suddenly had an audience. And okay, next. Different types of literary series. There's the series with a single arc, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, where you've got a single arc, story arc, going through all of the books in a series. Episodic. Agatha Christie wrote episodic series. Miss Marple, Hercule Poirot, Nora Roberts' In-Depth series is now, 40 or 50 books in. And people buy them. They continue to buy them. Interlinked. Often these are romances where you see 6 teenagers show up on Martha's Vineyard for the summer, and you have 3 different romances, 3 different books, you know, as the series progresses. So it doesn't always have to be the same character. It can be a setting or a world that people fall in love with. Next. So if you're planning on writing a series, you have to think about, number one, who's the star? As you continue through a series, loose ends from previous books. You can leave some loose ends. It helps to sell the next book in the series. That's different than a cliffhanger. Characters, you don't have to have character growth just in one book. You can have that character growth happen across the series. The setting can change, or it can grow, or you can explore it in more depth through the series. And what's the central conflict or premise? Why exactly is it a series? What are you showing to the reader, and why would they want to continue buying? So the single arc. If you're going to have a single arc series like Harry Potter, you not only have to know how it starts, you also have to have an idea about how it's going to end. So a lot of people will outline, at least a general outline, the entire series before they ever start writing book one. I do not do that. I don't outline at all. I did write 3 books, 3 novels that were all outlined and done the way they tell you how to do that stuff. None of those books has ever been published. Nobody liked them. So they'll need to be rewritten. But you do need to know where you're going. Ian Wesley Smith calls it writing into the dark. Well, you can do that, but you have to have an idea. With a series, you have to have some kind of idea of what the end game is going to be. You're promising something whenever you say, here's book 1, here's book 2, here's book 3. Someplace down the line, you've got to come across with the promise, the delivery of what it is that people have been going on this ride with you. Identify the adventures or obstacles, outcomes, character growth, central characters, new characters, villains. How many villains are you going to have? 1 per book? 1 for the whole series? There's a lot of small villains in Harry Potter, in addition to Voldemort. So episodic, usually the same main character. You see this a lot in mysteries. You don't see it so much in romances. Romance readers tend not to want a person to go through a romance per book. They want that's a death knell for a romance. But same main character, growth, some but not necessary. How much does Hercule Poirot grow over the course of however many books Agatha Christie wrote? Not much. He's the same character all the way through. Miss Marple is the same character all the way through. I mean, she ages, she's already what, 80 years old, and in the first book, and by the end of it, she's 81. But you can reveal different aspects of character over time. You can pick one new thing to explore in each book, or you can gradually let the reader in on more and more depth into the character. But they're getting to know the character, but you're not seeing that much growth, perhaps. Next. The interlinked books. Settings are very often things like a resort hotel, a town, an island, a sports team, an organization. It doesn't necessarily have the same characters in each book or the same main characters in each book, but it's a world or a setting that people enjoy the friend of mine writes motorcycle gang romance. Pays the bills. So, but it doesn't have the same characters in it, but you know, this motorcycle gang or this type of setting is something that some readers enjoy reading. So next. Endings. If you're going to write a series, readers hate cliffhangers. Perils of Pauline, you know, tied to the railroad tracks and this and that. They're not going to wait 6 months to find out if she escaped the train. They get upset. They write nasty things on Amazon about you and your books. They tell other people not to buy them. Even just simply foreshadowing something from a next book, I've had people, readers accuse me of cliffhangers when there wasn't any cliffhanger. It was just an unresolved plot thread. But each book should reach an end, a satisfying ending. And that is one of the things. You can't just take a 1,000-page book and chop it up into 333-page chunks. You know, there has to be some kind of resolution, some kind of end that makes people feel good about it. Yes. Unanswered questions make people pick up the book. Unresolved plot threads make them pick up the next book. But there's a difference between that and, like I said, tying your heroine to the railroad tracks and then just walking off and say, see me again in 6 months when I finish the next one. By that time, they will have executed her in their minds. And other considerations. An omnibus box set. I don't know if you can, how much you can see of this series down here. First book was released in 2019. The last book was released in 2020. Sold very, very well as ebooks on Amazon. Earlier this year, now I've put out 2 other series since then, several, 5 books, something like that since then. But earlier this year, I combined those into an omnibus box set, just the ebook. At this point, it's the omnibus set is my second biggest seller. It seems that people who buy box sets are a different type of buyer. You can get a big sales bump by grouping them together, putting them out there. I don't advertise it, but it is doing very well. Right now, my second biggest seller after my most recent novel. So, like I said, the buyer, and that goes back to also to the fact there are some people who will not start a series that isn't completed because of the George R.R. Martin phenomenon, the Philip Rothfuss phenomenon of when's the next book coming out? Oh, I remember being so angry at Robert Jordan because he hadn't finished his series. And then I found out that he was dead. I kind of forgave him, you know. But his estate found Brian Sanderson to finish off the series, but it does, you know, when you're promised something and nobody carries through, they tend to get upset. Marketing. And here's where the rubber hits the road as far as books. You can write for yourself, you can write for your kids, you can write for your friends, but if you want to write for a living, you have to sell the damn things. You have a series, you can discount or make the first book in a series perma-free. Give it away. I know a lot of people who swear by this. I know one author who, you know, she averaged about 120,000 a month last year in sales, and she swears by perma-free first in series. She also writes incredibly fast. You know, she, I think, published 15 books last year. But she'll give you the first book in the series. She's confident enough in her writing and in her stories that she knows you're going to pick up the next one and you're going to pay full price for it. She promotes that first book even though it's free. You know, she'll spend ad money on it. Reviews build on first books over time. This book has over 2,000 reviews on Amazon. This one I looked at the other day. It's what, 2016, 17? It just crossed 1,000 review line. People may not read reviews, but they do look at something. It says it's got 2, 3, 4, 25,000 reviews and say, oh, if all those people read it, it must be good. Okay. BookBub, other promotional newsletters, Kobo, iBooks, Nook, all offer special promotions for first books in series. Book Barbarian will do a special 2-book promotion for the first 2 books in a series. Next. Also makes your life easier. If you've written the first book in the series, you built, in my case, science fiction and fantasy. A lot of the first book goes to world building. You have to create the world, you have to create the magic system, you have to create your character, everything like that. Second book, you can just launch right into the story because all that's done. You can refer back to book 1 for a few things, but you don't want to bore the reader. You know, people that are buying second book are going to, yeah, those are my series, book 1s. One on the far left is a single book 1. Book 2 had problems and didn't get finished. So I'm sure there's people upset at me about that, but I do plan, I figured out how to go back and rewrite it to where it works. But second book had problems. You can spend all your time worrying about it, or you can write something else, which is what I did. So, okay, next slide. Downside. writing series. Like I said, if first book bombs and you're committed to subsequent books, especially one of the things you see in Facebook writer groups and stuff, some of the gurus of self-publishing will tell you rapid release, release a book a month, a book a month. One young lady that I know sold over $10,000 her first month with her first book. Phenomenal. But she had been writing in Wattpad and had a author, a reader base built up. She made over $100,000 her first year as a published novelist. She was turning books out. She now works as a dog walker. She burned out to the point where she sits down in front of a computer and gets the shakes. She can't do it. But you'll hear people saying rapid release, write the entire series and then release them every 2 weeks or every month, and build that momentum, and then what do you do? At the end of the 5th book or something, you get to start writing the next 5 books, and people are going to wait 2 years for you or a year for you to put out the next book. But some people swear by it. Some, as I said before, some readers won't start an incomplete series. They wait until the series is complete before they'll buy book 1. Those people are very vocal, but I don't believe there's that many of them out there. I release my books as I finish them. Holding books back has never made any sense to me. If I can make, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 between the time I release the first book and the time I have the second book finished, why would I want to forgo that money? And I write slow for self-published authors. I mean, I released the end of February, and I'm hoping to get this book released by the end of August. So, you don't have to release 6 books a year to make a living. Some readers can become nasty about waiting for the next book. They get really nasty about abandoning a series, or, whenever that, I mean, there are people I'm sure that have burned George Martin in effigy. And then there's always the problem of you start a series and then you run out of ideas, or you get tired of writing it, or you decide you just want to strangle the main character. I have heard that killing off your main character in the middle of a book is not the best idea for continuation of people reading. After they've thrown their Kindle against the wall and broken it, they really hate you. So, next. That it? Okay. One of the things I want to talk about was branding, and I don't think you can see it very well on the monitors, but can everybody see this? Okay. You pick up this book, you look at these, you almost immediately know. If you're familiar with the series, you know that this is books in a series, okay? Same here. This was the first book that I had done by a professional cover artist. It was the first book that really sold also. Anybody who tells you that covers don't sell books is, shall we say, uninformed. But the branding here, this one right here, this isn't mine. Some of you may know Deborah Harkness. It's a Netflix series made of these books, okay? So you can see the branding, okay? branding here. Now, this is a series by John Varley that's about 50 or 60 years old. Any branding there? You would never think that this and this were the continuation of a series. It is a trilogy. And it's, I don't, sometimes I think that back then when there was less competition, maybe they didn't feel they had to put that much thought into building a brand or anything like that. But like I said, I want people to know I have had people, this is a stock photo of the cover model, okay? I've had people upset that someone else used this model on their book and thought that they were plagiarizing my covers. Well, no, I just didn't feel like spending the thousands of dollars to buy up every photo she has in that outfit. But if you really want to brand and be unique, model on these covers is my niece. I don't have to worry about anybody buying those photos and using them someplace else.
Yeah.
And this one, the background photo was taken by my wife in Ireland. Gives you a way to write off your trips. So, questions?